Good afternoon. It's Friday the 16th of January 2026, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host in studio today is Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And we'll be joined once again by Basil Valentine today. Now, later in the programme, we're going to be covering what's described as the new technocratic Board of Peace for Gaza, the use of the Insurrection Act in the United States, and of course, Greenland. But we're going to begin today, Patrick, with the use of the various Palestine Action related court actions as a mechanism to attack everyone's right to a jury trial here in the UK.
Such an important precedent. We'll bring this graphic up on screen here. Under threat, trial by jury. And it's just, Mike, incredible to me that this issue of Palestine Action is being used by the state, or it appears that way, to basically undercut the use of juries in the UK. First with these speed trials to do all these mass arrests without a jury, 20-minute trials. And now we get to the actual core, which is the independence of the jury. And Mike, also the issue of jury nullification is also an important part of this. All of these things are hinging on this issue with Palestine Action. So, Mike, if you think that this doesn't affect you because you don't support or you don't sympathize or you have no interest in this issue at all regarding the proscription of Palestine Action and these story which we're about to cover, you're probably making a big mistake if you're living in Britain, because it is fundamental what the decisions being made and using these people in this organization are actually being used to undercut jury trials. Right. So it is important. You do need to take an interest in this issue. So, but just to bring us up to date, how did this begin? It's important that we just give you an important update here, very important update here. The 3 Palestine Action protesters and their hunger strikes, these are the 3 remaining hunger strikers. They have now ceased their hunger strike, and we'll tell you why in a moment here. So these are the 3. Louis Chiaramello, he is diabetic, so he's alternating days hunger strike. But Heba Meraisi and Kamran Ahmed, they also have withdrawn their hunger strike now. Now, Heba in the 73rd day, Mike, that's the exact amount of time that Kieran O'Doherty in 1991 reached the longest hunger striker before, I believe. I'm not sure, did he pass away or not? I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
But nonetheless, just put this in perspective, Mike. The earliest in terms of the hunger striking was 46 days back in 81. Yes. So this is an exceptional event, and I think people need to pay attention to that. But we'll back up on screen here. So here's the gist of this, and this is the important part. These 3 prisoners announced the end of their hunger strike after the UK government, decided not to award a £2 billion contract to the Israeli arms company subsidiary Elbit Systems UK. So they're saying that the UK government canceling that contract seems to be grounds for them to end their hunger strike.
Well, that was one of their key demands, wasn't it?
This is one of their key demands. And also they're being treated as terrorists, even though, Mike, when they were arrested in August 2024, Palestine Action was not proscribed at that time by the UK government, yet they're being treated and incarcerated like terrorists. So, but what's amazing, when we go to the BBC, that was The Guardian there, and we'll bring the BBC here. This is their article. Mike, I searched and I searched. I went down, I read this 3 times, no mention of Elbit Systems or the government basically falling on their sword regarding this and canceling this $2 billion contract. This is the home and legal correspondent, Dominic Casciani, and he doesn't somehow mention the government $2 billion contract, which is the reason they stopped the hunger strike, or Elbit Systems. So this is the BBC. What exactly is going on here? Nothing. The BBC has left out the most important part of the story. And why? Well, here, no mention of the BBC and Elbit Systems and the cancellation of this contract. So we have to, I put this through a new AI bot that we're working on here, Mike. This is the Joseph Stalin, or we'll call it the Uncle Joe AI translator. And this is what Uncle Joe said. Uncle Joe translation: state propaganda, organ shielding government apparatchiks not wanting to publicly admit defeat. That's according to our new chatbot. Thank you, Uncle Joe. And this brings us to Craig Murray here. Now, Craig Murray, Mike, they've delayed the judicial review on the proscription of Palestine Action. Craig Murray's putting a challenge in the Scottish courts directly, and he's making incredible headway here. And I do encourage people to go to Craig Murray's website, A Step Towards Sanity. And this is directly tied to the main story here, which we'll bring onto the screen in just a moment. And this is very well summarized by Jonathan Cook. We'll get Basil Valentine's commentary on this. So the barrister for the defendants here, he's basically in the crosshairs of the judge on this issue. So this is the dramatic point of the trial. At one point, the jury member sent a note to the judge, Mr. Justice Johnson, asking this very question. If we decide that they, the defendants, genuinely believe that they were performing life-saving action and were morally compelled to destroy these weapons, they believed they were going to be used to kill civilians in what they believed to be an illegal genocide, would that amount to a lawful excuse? And here was the response. The judge, who repeatedly stifled efforts by the defense to air evidence of Elbit Systems' involvement in genocide, answered that the jury must not take into account such a lawful excuse. In the judge's words, there is no evidence in this case of any that is capable in law of amounting to a lawful excuse. So that is not something that you need to consider. Now, this is where things got even more interesting, and this is the KC, Rajiv Menon, and this is where he entered the story. He made a rousing defense of the rights of juries to reject judicial interference and of their right to make up their own minds based on guilt and on factors that might mitigate guilt. And he does so at the very moment when Starmer and his ministers are seeking to eradicate the principle of jury trials. Everything hinges on this case. I want to go to Basil Valentine in a moment, but Mike, Starmer, they really need convictions here to justify the proscription of Palestine Action. That's what Jonathan Cook says, and I think that's a fair assessment.
So, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a KC, I'm not a judge, but it seems to me that the comments by Rajiv Menon are absolutely appropriate. This judge, if he is directing the jury, he is not giving the jury the chance to make up their own minds. And of course, you talked about annulment by jury earlier on. That is key here because, of course, the jury has the right to decide whether under this set of circumstances, this was not a crime. And he has effectively, by making that definitive statement in the way that he has removed the right of the jury to annul bad legislation.
Yeah,
and that is a step too far, in my opinion. But I'm not legally qualified. I got to stress.
Well, I think Basil Valentine has some historical perspective on this. Basil, we're going to bring you on right now. Basil, your thoughts on this? This is absolutely, I think, a pivotal moment, perhaps in legal history in Britain. Is that an understatement?
Yeah, I mean, the right to trial by jury goes all the way back to 1670, and a key case where jurors were imprisoned, but nevertheless brought back a verdict which was contrary to what the judge wished. One of the key defendants, Mr. Penn, then went on to America to found the great state of Pennsylvania. Interesting that 355 years of precedent is about to be overturned if this government has its way. Now, there's been a lot of tension in the case at Woolwich Crown Court with the judge. I'm indebted to, of all media organizations, The Face, the 1980s music and fashion magazine. It has far and away the best reportage on what's been happening there this week. And it is extraordinary and worth pointing out that corporate media seem to be completely ignoring the fact that so much hinges on this case, including the proscription of Palestine Action as a terrorist organization. It would appear that the judges on that panel are waiting for a verdict in these cases to see whether or not they can use them to bolster a case for prescribing. We get into some very detailed legal arguments. As you said, Patrick, the judge ruled out a justification defense, basically that the jury could find the defendants not guilty, even though they'd committed a crime. But the concept of jury equity remains. Juries are entitled to find defendants not guilty, and the judge cannot direct the jury as to their findings. This is the key point that the defendant's KC made. Judges are not allowed to tell a jury what the verdict should be. Otherwise, what would be the point of having the jury? We can see clearly here, if there was no jury, it's highly likely that the judge would find against the defendants, but they're entitled to make up their own mind. So an awful lot of, lot hinges on this decision. The jury retired on Tuesday of this week to consider their verdicts. We may get them back piecemeal, one by one, on individual counts and individual cases, or they may come back and return verdicts on all the charges against all six simultaneously. We simply don't know. Those verdicts could come today, they could come next week. All depends on how long the jury feel they need to deliberate.
What's interesting, I'll go to you in a minute, Mike, but I'd like your comment on this as well, Mike. But to Mike and Basil, Samuel Corner, everything seems to hinge on this particular individual. He's the one accused of a violent sledgehammer attack that hit either intentionally or inadvertently a law enforcement officer on site. And they would have to prove that this was intentional and it wasn't just the result of an ensuing brawl. And this is a defense that's usually brought in for football hooligan fights and things like that, if you look at past cases. So, but by doing that, if they get a conviction based on some kind of a premeditated, aggravated burglary, violent disorder that has intention attached to it, then that fits the proscription of Palestine Action as a violent terrorist organization, as it were. So there's so much hinging on the technicalities of this case, Mike. Yeah,
well, I mean, what I would say about that, Patrick, is, this is, if the case against that guy is proven, then that would be the first, as far as I'm aware, the first conviction for any kind of violent action. But we're not talking about guns and bombs here. We're not even talking about petrol bombs or so on. But the traditional terrorist paraphernalia. We're talking about something that was brought on site in order to do damage to the physical apparatus of Elbit Systems. It was not intended to do damage, or at least it's not proven yet that it was intended to do damage to any individual. So, but nonetheless, that's one case. Is that what it takes to become a terrorist organization? No, one case. But Basil said there that it's highly likely that the judge would find a guilty verdict. I think the judge, in what he said and the way that he expressed what he said to the jury, has absolutely made his position clear. He considers that there is no justification for the action that they took. So I think it's more than just likely that he would, if there was no jury in the case, that he would find them guilty. And the problem here is that juries are inconvenient for the government these days. They're trying to justify the restriction on the use of juries because of the length of time that the backlog that there is in the court system. But it's not just that. The fact is that juries, often find find in ways that governments don't like, and that I think is the main driver for wanting to get rid of them.
Oh, this case is definitely an example of that. The state would prefer, with its current politics, would prefer no jury, or a non-independent jury, a jury that couldn't make a decision on its own common law volition, as it were. Right. That's really what's at stake. I want to bring Basil on in a moment, but before that, let's look at, this is the part of the speech here. This is, again, serialized at Jonathan Cook's Substack. Everybody support Jonathan Cook, one of the great independent journalists in Britain and in the world, quite frankly, at this moment. But here's the important part, and he's addressing members of the jury. You can find Charlotte and her co-defendants not guilty of criminal damage. It is a perfectly fair and proper verdict for you to return in this case. Please don't think for one moment that you're somehow barred as a matter of law from doing so. And it goes on. And Craig Murray said this is one of the most important speeches that he's ever seen in his life, moments in sort of legal history and precedent here. And Jonathan Cook includes this, Mike, and this is a placard here. And I'll read this. If you can't read the Old English, it says, near this site, William Penn and William Mead were tried in 1670 for preaching to an unlawful assembly in Grace Church Street, talking about a Quaker meeting at the time. This tablet commemorates the courage and endurance of the jury, Thomas Vere, Edward Bushell, and 10 others who refused to give a verdict against them, although locked up without food for 2 nights and were fined for their final verdict of not guilty. The case of these jurymen was reviewed on a writ of habeas corpus, and the Chief Justice Vaughan delivered the opinion of the court, which established the right of juries to give their verdict according to their convictions. So important. And again, if you want to read more about this case, we direct you here. And I'm not plugging Jeff Bezos, but it is available on Amazon, The Trial of William Penn and William Mead for causing a tumult and the Old Bailey, etc., 1670. And I want to go back to you, Basil, just briefly. People who don't identify with this issue because they don't support the Palestinian cause, but might identify as, quote, patriots, they seem to be wildly disinterested in this issue at all, when in fact you have a Pakistani, or I don't know if he's a Muslim, KC, defending the fundamentals of common law in England. Again, is extraordinary, but this cuts right through race and identity politics. It gets right to the fundamentals of a free society. Basil, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think that all the conservatives and constitutionalists would be all over this case. We don't have a written constitution in Britain. It is defined very largely by precedent. And the 1670 case is one of the most important precedents in the whole of British law. And our, as I say, unwritten constitution. This particular trial is taking place with a jury and with the terrorism, whole use of the terrorist legislation hanging over the defendants for the first time. In 6 months' time, a similar case could be brought with no jury, if David Lammy has his way, and with the defendants predefined as terrorists. We're then in a very, very different place. So it could be, well, of course we hope not, that this is the last trial of its type where defendants are not assumed to be terrorists and defined as such in law, and where they have the right to a jury trial. Both those things could disappear if the government have their way.
Very important. So much hinges on this. And Basil, just on the back end of this, we want to get your comment here. Tribunal finds no basis for misconduct in General Medical Council, GMC case against Dr. Abu Sitta. Explain to us the significance of this finding this week.
Well, I mean, it's really extraordinary that Dr. Abu Sitta had to go through this process. He described lawyers for LFI, UK Lawyers for Israel, as trying to destroy his life. And it would appear that they're trying to paint him as inherently violent because he is simply of Arabian extraction. But it's really just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I'm pleased to say in this case, the tribunal found that there was nothing anti-Semitic about anything he'd said or written or done. But of course, the process is the punishment, and UK Lawyers for Israel are well funded and, keep bringing these vexatious cases against not just him, but dozens of others. We're streeting posted online about now the imposition of the IHRA definition on the health service across the board, primarily to silence doctors from, speaking their minds about the genocide, and particularly Britain's complicity in it. So what streeting is trying to do, what the government is trying to do, is stop people from simply stating the facts about Israel's genocide and Britain's role in it. If you work in the NHS, you're not allowed to do so. You'll end up before one of these tribunals.
And so it's incredible. You have all of these NGOs, Stop Hate. There's a whole bevy of these, and I think it's Lawyers for Israel. These different organizations is starting to be recognized by some of these judicial bodies or tribunal bodies as being vexatious litigants. Basil, in other words, there's a possibility that they might now be sort of blacklisted, if you will, from bringing these spurious cases, vexatious cases. Just briefly, final comment, Basil.
Yes, it's to be hoped so. The key thing is the judicial review, the legal challenge to the imposition of the IHRA definition on the NHS as being fundamentally anathema to the right to freedom of speech. There's a crowdfunder for that. We sincerely hope it succeeds, because at the moment there are people in the GMC staff who are now being forced to use the IHRA definition, which we haven't got time to go into detail here, but basically means that any meaningful criticism of Israel and its actions is deemed as beyond the pale and means that you will be in the crosshairs of disciplinary action. So that's got to be overturned. West Streeting is very firmly the property of the Zionist lobby in the UK. He's not acting on behalf of the British people. He's acting on behalf of a foreign government.
Thank you, Basil Valentine. Mike?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, let's just have a quick look at what's going on with Gaza at the moment, because Donald Trump yesterday announced on Truth Social, let's bring it up on screen, that the Gaza Board of Peace has been formed. It's my great honour, he said, to announce that the Board of Peace has been formed. The members of the board will be announced shortly, but I can say with certainty that it is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time, any place. Thank you for your attention on this matter. So that's what he wrote on Truth Social. Now, on Wednesday, Steve Witkoff posted on X today, on behalf of President Trump, are announcing the launch of Phase 2 of the President's 20-point plan to end the Gaza conflict, moving from ceasefire to demilitarization, technocratic governance and reconstruction. Phase 2 establishes, he says, a transitional technocratic Palestinian administration in Gaza. What does he mean by using that term?
Technocratic. He means non-democratic. He means effectively a colonial administrative government. So who's going to be the viceroy of Gaza, Mike? There's a few candidates vying for that position.
We will come on to that in one second. I'm just going to also mention this because on Wednesday as well, Egypt, Qatar and Turkey released a joint statement also using the term technocratic, announcing that Ali Shath, a former Palestinian Authority official, had been selected to lead the Palestinian Technocratic Committee charged with administrating the Gaza Strip. So who else is involved? Well, Politico tells us, citing an unnamed source, that the board will consist of the heads of state of around 9 countries. So that's the United States, United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, UAE and Jordan. And while they say former British Prime Minister Tony Blair was initially expected to be included, he has since stepped down from the position. However, it's not quite that simple. Politico claims that Blair will serve on an executive committee attached to the Board of Peace, which will also include Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, amongst others. Well, ever dripping with irony, the British regime in its statement said the UK has been consistently clear that the future of Gaza must be Palestinian-led, which is why it's going to be Tony Blair, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I mean, could they do better, Patrick?
Bring that picture of Blair back up on screen just a moment, please. It's too bad, Mike, there's not a safe and effective jab for TB in Gaza. That's what we hope anyway. We hope for these things. No, to be clear, Mike, bring that off screen, not to traumatize the audience any further. But Mike, phase 1 isn't finished. Phase 1 is the ethnic cleansing, is the genocide, the extermination of the native Palestinian population, and the ethnic cleansing of any survivors. Make no mistake, Israel's been very clear that that's their phase 1. And they're not finished with that yet.
Right.
So I think just put that into perspective so people read through the propaganda.
Basil, have you any brief thoughts on this?
It just goes from bad to worse, doesn't it? I mean, my understanding, let's always recenter the suffering of the Palestinian people, because the conditions on the ground in Gaza are as bad as ever. There's been no meaningful ceasefire. It's merely the rate at which Palestinians are exterminated has slowed down somewhat. But, children have been freezing to death. Nothing like the amount of aid has come into the country. Dozens of people have been killed by buildings collapsing, having previously been badly damaged. And the yellow line keeps advancing so that Palestinians are crammed into ever smaller space. And all that completely ignored by the corporate media. We only ever hear about Gaza in the corporate media when it's an announcement like this about the imposition of government on the beleaguered people by Western powers.
Thank you, Basil. Thank you for that. Okay, let's move on to the ad break. And we got to say, if you do like what the UK column does, we do need your ongoing support. There's a button there to click on the front page of the website, which will take you to a page that shows your options. If you can't support us financially, please do share material that you find on the website so we can beat this censorship regime that we're facing. Now, as for future video content, we've got the weekly banter. That's Charles, myself, and Jerm speaking tonight at 7 p.m. We have Carl speaking to Dr. Warwick Powell about global chaos, breaking down Trump's moves on Venezuela, Iran, and Greenland. That's at 9 p.m. tonight. Charles's discussion with Ian Overton is on the UK column website now, if you want to watch on demand, if you didn't see it yesterday at 1 p.m. And then on Sunday, we have the 1,000 Words podcast. Let's just have a look at a quick promo for that.
Tune in this Sunday for the second instalment of my portrait and conversation with comedian Abby Roberts. I haven't laughed this much whilst painting since Richard Vobes told us the story of Graham the Alien. Abby recounts her experience of being arrested at a COVID protest and how Susie the cat wasn't happy about it. God, truth, spirituality, authenticity all get mulled over whilst I try and capture Abby's spirit and likeness. See how I get on this Sunday at 7 p.m. exclusively on UK column. For past shows, look for 1,000 Words in the show drop-down menu.
Thanks to Jake for that. So, Abby, is the second part 2 of this 3-part series. This one's for members only, but if you're a UK column member, please join us at 7 p.m. on Monday. Okay, let's move on then to the question of insurrection, Patrick, because, this went out on Truth Social on yesterday. In fact, was it yesterday? Yes, it was. If the corrupt politicians in Minnesota don't obey the law and stop the professional agitators and insurrectionists from attacking the patriots of ICE who are only trying to do their job, I will institute the Insurrection Act, which many presidents have done before me, and quickly put an end to the travesty that has taken place in that once great state. Is it true that many presidents have brought in the Insurrection Act or called in the Insurrection Act in the past?
No, it's an extremely rare occurrence, Mike, and it's been done in the past for reasons very different than what we are seeing here. And so that's one of the problems with this conversation, as you'll show us, and we have some video as well.
Yes. Okay. Well, this was apparently because a new wave of protests began in Minneapolis on the evening of the 14th of January, following another shooting by federal agents involving, in this case, a Venezuelan national on the north side of the city. This was the response from the Minnesota governor, Tim Walz. I'm making a direct appeal to the president. Let's turn the temperature down. Stop this campaign of retribution. This is not who we are. And an appeal to Minnesotans. I know this is scary. We must speak out loudly, urgently, and also peacefully. We cannot fan the flames of chaos. That's what he wants. And he's referring to President Trump. And it does, I have to say, Patrick, it does on the face of it look like that's what, there's definitely an attempt by the federal government to fan the flames of this. Yeah, the language is increasingly aggressive and heated. And so this is bringing people out on the streets, but it's also making ICE agents behave more and more badly, it seems.
Well, they're giving a dog whistle from the federal government. They've been told they have immunity from prosecution, so they can commit any crimes. We've heard stories, Mike, where and we've seen as well on video, which will show you some of them. They're rear-ending cars because people won't get out of their cars. They want to do random stop and searches to check people's papers, see if they're U.S. citizens or not. So
Yes.
they're ramming the back of people to get them to stop and come out of their car, and then they grab them. So Donald Trump has sent 2,000. He sent reinforcements as well. So now 2,500 roughly masked paramilitary agents who aren't actual federal agents, but many of them have been hired through recruitment agencies that deal with mercenaries and security guards and things like that. And so these aren't real sort of servants of the people, as it were. They're basically hired guns, wearing masks and stopping people at random, demanding to see their papers, demanding to prove their ID. I just see where this is going.
It's going to a very bad destination.
And then you didn't show the other Trump tweet, which we could have shown, where he's saying there's going to be retribution to Minnesota for putting up resistance to what looks like a federal invasion. And it's so funny, Mike, because they're the same people on the right that were defending the Bundy family at Bundy Ranch for federal overreach. And they went there and rallied to the support of the Bundys because the federal government had no jurisdiction coming in all guns blazing. In that case, that was 10 years ago. And now you see a total reversal. The right are cheering on executive power. They're cheering on the federal government, even in the face of, killing American citizens. They're still cheering this on, which I find to be extraordinary. It just shows you how dysfunctional U.S. politics is at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, on Tuesday, if we bring this on screen, on Tuesday, 6 senior lawyers from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota resigned, along with 4 leaders of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. The Minnesota attorneys told the New York Times on screen at the moment that they were outraged that instead of investigating the ICE shooter in the recent killing, senior Justice Department officials wanted to investigate the Goods family, and so they were also upset that the FBI was refusing to cooperate with state-level investigations. And in the meantime, of course, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is facing impeachment efforts as a result of the ICE behaviour. The impeachment articles detail accusations against Noem, including obstruction of Congress, violations of public trust, and self-dealing. The allegations are that she denied access to ICE facilities for Congress members, that she misused funds for personal gain, and that she compromised public safety and constitutional rights. And this comes on top of the controversy over the podium that she was standing behind earlier this week, carrying the phrase "one of ours, all of yours," and that furore. The furore came about because of allegations that this was a Nazi-linked slogan, or perhaps the slogan was linked to the Civil War, the Spanish Civil War. Sorry, the fact checkers were out and forced to deny this, and I would ask why they would be keen to do that. But before we ask that question, let's just have a look at that video clip that you were talking about, Patrick, because we'll have a look at it and talk about it in a second.
Yeah, this is one of the most tame.
Police before I'm disabled, so I can go to the doctor up there. That's why I didn't move. It's okay.
Does this make you feel strong? Yeah, man. This is your duty.
So, Patrick, obviously the allegation over that podium sign was that this was somehow linked to Nazi behaviour during the Second World War. In fact, as I said, the fact checkers have been out. If we bring the fact check article on screen again just for a second, they've been out to make it clear this is not a phrase from Nazi Germany. But
what does it mean then?
Well, we'll come on to that. My question is, why are the fact checkers so keen to do this? Because they all hate Trump, don't they? At least they've taken a very anti-Trump position in the
previously.
past.
Yeah.
But so why are they rushing to his defence now? What Could it be that it's not for his benefit that they've been quick to act? Could it be that this slogan represents the policy of Israel, which has been imported into the United States, and they're now openly, bragging about it effectively, the policy of collective punishment, which Israel has pursued for decades? Because all the criticism of that comment was all about Nazi Germany and Spanish Civil War. I didn't see anybody drawing parallels with what Israel has been doing.
No, well, it's common. Israel would normally say one Israeli dies, we're going to kill 1,000 Palestinians, or something to that effect. It's a fascist, very authoritarian phrase. Right. One of ours, all of yours. That has no business being on a government podium. Let's be clear. Not unless the government that you're looking at is representing an ideology that is different to the one you think it's representing. And we're starting to see more and more that is the case here, Mike, that this is, showing up and making a scene like that, grabbing people off the streets, ramming cars, pulling people out of cars, and et cetera, demanding Americans show their papers to prove that they're a citizen in a public space. I mean, we've never seen this before in the U.S. Maybe there was, maybe 150 years ago or something, but modern times, no. So it is highly disturbing, and it speaks to, I think, a federal government, a Trump administration that believes it's above the law, that believes that, and he has mocked the Constitution in the past. So people are rightly saying he doesn't have any respect for the Constitution or international law, which he said this week that he doesn't need to abide by international law. And normally you see countries that don't recognize international law tend to also not recognize domestic law either, historically. Right. And I think the U.S. is now facing that problem.
Basil, any thoughts?
Well, it speaks to the extreme polarization in American society. Well, the sort of, the battle lines are really drawn between increasingly authoritarian and violent oligarchy, of which Trump is the current figurehead and a particularly erratic one, and then the great mass of ordinary American people. Theoretically, Trump got a mandate for all this from the MAGA crowd, but MAGA has since fractured and cratered, and his support is absolutely in the toilet. But it just shows that, the sort of civil society that America was built on over the last 200 years is starting to disintegrate. And yes, we do have to point out that these ICE agents are trained in Israel, trained to use deadly force, trained to regard protesters and what we call civilians as the enemy. And that is a sea change in societal behavior.
Thank you, Basil, for that.
Okay, Patrick, let's move on then to Iran.
So a little, let's give you a very, very quick synopsis of where we're at with this story. We'll bring this up on screen. So destabilizing Iran, this is exactly what the plan was. And where we're at right now is that there seems to be a lull. We're told, Mike, that the Trump administration has backed off strikes against Iran. There were pre-planned strikes against Iran. We now know that these have been planned for weeks. So, and they even, the plan predated the so-called protests or demonstrations, which be really riots.
That's some crystal ball he's got right there.
In Tehran. And it is pretty clear what happened here. Trump telegraphed the plan. I think this was one of his undoings. He said that if the mullahs shoot any protesters, we're going to come and intervene. So he said that early on. And then we find out Mike Pompeo, former CIA director, admits that Mossad is on the ground stirring up the protests. And the Israeli press, the Jerusalem Post, also acknowledged this, as have other Israel 14 have acknowledged this. They're boasting about the fact that they were ginning up the violent riots that included arson, burning of mosques, the murder of civilians, and the killing of 100 Iranian police. Now, I don't know about you, Mike, but if there were foreign-backed mobs in Britain that killed 100 police officers, do you think that the state would just be hands off and let the democracy mobs flourish, or would they just come down with the most incredible heavy hand?
Yes, they would.
And in America too. But yet the American and the British governments are saying, and political leaders are saying, they're being heavy-handed with these democracy protesters. So I think the game has been given up here on this. So Trump claims he's now claiming credit for stopping the massacre that didn't happen. Now, there's a lot of reports, and we'll go through the disinformation side of this, which to me is incredible. But let's just say, Lindsey Graham, if you want an indication that the attacks are definitely off, I have never seen so deflated Lindsey Graham as in this clip, which to me is a pretty strong indication that there's not going to be a strike for now. But here is the South Carolina peach, Lindsey Graham.
There are a lot of headlines out there that are, in my view, not accurate. President Trump's resolve is not the question. The question is, when we do an operation like this, should it be bigger or smaller? I'm in the camp of bigger. Time will tell. I'm hopeful and optimistic that the regime days are numbered.
I've never seen him that. I mean, he's been totally high on the Venezuela op,
Right.
overthrowing all these governments, and then to bomb Iran. I mean, Lindsey's had such a whirlwind of excitement over the last couple of weeks.
But as well as that, he's been anticipating dealing with Iran for how long? Decades, maybe?
It's part of his life's work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he thought we were finally going to get that.
It's the legacy of John McCain, his former close associate here. So, but where are all these claims coming from about these massacres of Iranians? And the number just keeps growing here. But I point people to this article here. We'll bring this up on screen. This is a great report by the Gray Zone. Western media whitewashes deadly riots in Iran, relying on U.S. government-funded regime change NGOs. Now, this is incredible. National Endowment for Democracy, which is really a CIA front. It's regarded as a CIA front by many people. Let's just drill down a little closer into this situation here. So you've seen the claims. 2,000 have been massacred by the regime, and then a few hours later it was 5,000, and then later that day it was 10,000. Then next day it blew up to 20,000. I think it's probably at 50, maybe 100,000. It seems to be going up by like 20,000 every few hours by the regime. And at every turn you find two actors, the U.S. government and Israel. For example, unconfirmed casualty numbers coming from Western, quote, human rights activists organizations. Here's one here, the Abdulrahman Boroman Center for Human Rights in Iran. Well, it's not in Iran, Mike, is it? It's in the United States. And here's another one. This is another one that's also mentioned a lot. It was the Center for Human Rights in Iran. That's not actually in Iran. That's actually New York City. And this is also a NED cutout organization. Iran International News. This has been admitted by former Israeli intelligence officers as a clearinghouse for disinformation and Israeli propaganda on Iran. And the latter will show you. There's other organizations here called the Human Rights Activist News Agency. They were doing anti-China campaigning, calling the Beijing Winter Olympics the Genocide Olympics. That same organization, they were repurposed to work on Iran in the last couple of weeks here. The Center for Human Rights in Iran, we mentioned that as well. So incredible here. But here's this you probably see a lot of this. Google is giving this priority on searches. And again, this is admitted by Israeli intelligence officials as being a disinformation hub for their propaganda, anti-Iranian propaganda activities as well. Just do a search here, Iran Human Rights Activist Network or Iran Human Rights. These are all Western-based NGOs. They're not in Iran. And the same exact formula was used for Syria. We had the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. They used the same formula for Venezuela. These are U.S.-based or British-based or EU-based human rights organizations.
Remind me who was behind the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. He was operating out of his bedroom.
Rami Abdulrahman above a chip shop in Coventry.
Yes.
So, but EU funded. That's not his real name. That was his pseudonym. Yeah. So again, so all of the Western influencers, Western politicians are drawing off this propaganda and then repeating it. And they're all putting these videos up online. But Nigel Farage was out on the street Now, Nigel doesn't like to opine on foreign policy issues unless they, except for boats coming over the channel. That's the extent of his foreign policy portfolio in terms of commentary. But he's really engaged in this regime change story on Iran. Here is Nigel Farage just the other day. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is in front of the Iranian embassy.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
We'll roll this.
You beautiful Persian people, you wonderful people, you freedom fighters. This time, are we going to win? Yes, we are! We're going to win. And then there's a terrible price being paid by many innocent people in every Iranian city right now. But you've got to believe that this is the moment.
We really appreciate you. May God bless you, and we wish everything good.
Well, may God bless all of you, and let freedom for Iran!
So this is new, that Nigel Farage seems to be taking a position on international affairs.
Well, he's taken a position, all right, Mike. He took a position in front of the Iran royalty flag. So he is effectively advocating for the return of a monarchy, even if he didn't explicitly say it. Those are all pro-monarchists there in front of a monarchy flag. And the monarch himself, the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi Jr., as it were, he's on record as saying he doesn't know anybody in Iran because he's lived his whole life in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles for the last 50 years. So he himself is not popular. He doesn't actually have a support base. So they're not going to take power. It's just not going to happen. And again, we're challenging all of these claims about these massacres by the, quote, regime, when in fact we have more evidence, documented evidence that Iranian law enforcement and people trying to basically stop arson and violence on the streets were killed en masse. So again, the claims of thousands of protesters slaughtered or executed or hung, it just hasn't materialized. But the propaganda keeps flowing. Here's a good example of it. Another one from the West, probably from the United States, probably involved in these organizations somehow. And it's just, there's hundreds, if not thousands of these videos. Many of them have been paid for, which will show you. These people are being paid activists, many of these. But here's a typical one right here.
The equivalent of 4 9/11s have happened in Iran in just the last 4 days. For context, the death toll of the last 3 years of the Russia-Ukraine war stands at 14,500. The number of protesters killed by the Islamic Republic stands at 12,000 in just the last 4 days. These numbers are being confirmed by rights groups, doctors working in Tehran's hospitals, and people who recently left Iran. This number focuses only on Tehran, the country's capital, not a sum of all of Iran's 31 provinces. Iran is going into day 7 of a total internet blackout. We'll only receive updated numbers once the country is reconnected to the outside world. The estimated number of those killed is said to be in the tens of thousands. This is a mass casualty event that has been overwhelming Iran's hospitals. Witnesses report regime forces shooting to kill using military-grade weapons and automatic machine guns typically reserved for the IRGC. Witnesses also confirm that the regime is shooting at anyone on the streets, whether you're a protester or not. This means they're not targeting, they're just shooting at random. Doctors report receiving victims who have been shot in the face and who have been shot at close range, including the elderly and teenagers. One witness sent a voice note saying that when people go to retrieve bodies of their loved ones from the morgue, they've been asked to pay an exorbitant fee. This is another cruelty the regime imposes on family members of protesters. This person also said that they were asked shirinishku, which means where are the sweets, where are the pastries? In our culture, when something good happens, like you get a new job, you have a baby, you buy a house, people ask you, oh, where are the pastries, shirinishku? It's a celebratory thing. This is the evil with which the regime treats Iranian people. They're asking it of people who are coming to pick up the dead bodies of their loved ones. A friend of my friend sent a message and said that her cousin was shot in the face and is now dead. We're reaching the point where every Iranian you know knows someone who has been killed or is friends with someone who knows someone who has been killed. Many of us are still unable to reach our loved ones. The Islamic Republic is massacring civilians in real time. They're shooting them in the eyes with birdshot, they're shooting them in the head at close range, and leaving a trail of bodies and blood in the streets. Please do not stay silent. Please share what this regime is doing. And please stand with the people of Iran.
So just to be clear, Mike, some of these are scripted because we have found videos from different people reading the exact same talking points, the exact same script. And what happened was, and it's admitted, the Israelis admit that they had agents on the ground, probably the CIA, probably British intelligence were involved as well. Let's not be naive. And then the Chinese helped to basically jam Starlink. Musk sent thousands of Starlink terminals into Iran. And the Chinese jammed it. And that's when the riots started to fizzle out because they weren't able to coordinate and do all the things over the internet. So that's incredible. So,
well, just before you move on, I just want to make the point that this story about an exorbitant fee being charged for the recovery of bodies, that was on the BBC News front page today. So they're taking some of these narratives themselves and promoting them.
And exactly. And notice what she said, Mike. A friend of a friend called me and told me ... This is just like 40 beheaded babies. So, and this is the same type of thing. Oh, I know somebody who knew somebody, mass rape after October 7th, etc. This is the propaganda that's used to basically, they want to pressure Trump to bomb Iran. This is clear in all of the messaging. So they think they get out of soft touch with Donald Trump on this issue. So let's look at the funding briefly here, just quickly. Many of you are already aware of this. Who are the influencers? Israel is paying $7,000 per post on X. So there's huge budgets. Millions have been allocated to the Esther Project, among many, as well as social media influencer agencies that are basically paying young influencers in the West to put out these videos that we need to save the people of Iran. Trump, please bomb, please intervene. We need to get rid of the regime. 20,000 have been massacred. There's mass rape. I even heard mass rape going on in Iran. So it's the same type of propaganda that we saw from the Israeli side before. It's being repurposed. A massive operation. They're spending tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions on the total information warfare side of this. And many of these people are getting paid a lot of money to do this. So please, people, be aware that everything you're seeing on social media, a lot of it is completely engineered and it's very expensive propaganda.
Okay, and well, I'll just very briefly mention that the Plymouth Herald today has a story saying that there's a major protest planned for Plymouth as death toll rises. So even in local media, we're getting the same propaganda as they're talking about thousands of people dying. And
major protest.
Major protests planned. I think that's probably going to be about it tomorrow.
That's big.
But anyway, my point is this is being brought down absolutely to the local level as they try to push this. Now, it
looks like the royal flag as well.
Yes.
So these are royalists.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
So how's the monarchy democratic? Well, that's another question.
Okay, let's move on to Greenland then. And well, here is a tweet, and we're going to say that this is according to Danish media. This is showing the meeting between Danish Foreign Minister and Donald Trump. So that was a couple of days ago, and this was on the request of Danish and Greenlandic governments, because they've had their first meeting with Trump, but actually mainly with J.D. Vance and also Marco Rubio about this demand for Trump to take over Greenland. And so they were represented by Lars Rasmussen, who's the Danish Foreign Minister, and the Greenland Foreign Minister, Vivian Motzfeldt. And so the main message that they were trying to get across after the meeting was that the meeting was held in a respectful tone, that they and the United States representatives agreed to disagree and to continue discussions, and that a high-level working group was going to be set up to see if there was any way to achieve some kind of agreement with respect to the security concerns of the United States, while they say not crossing the Kingdom of Denmark's red lines about maintaining the sovereignty of its land. So I wonder, is the Kingdom of Greenland in a position to have red lines? Now, it's reported that Rasmussen stressed that he and Motzfeldt were able to oppose the narrative that Chinese and Russians pose an imminent threat to Greenland. But that's quite strange, because that's not the message he was expressing during his comment to the press following the meeting. Let's just have a brief listen to this.
But I must say that, of course, we share to some extent his concerns. There is definitely a new security situation in the Arctic and the high north. All of us, transatlantic, took the peace dividend years ago, and we have the vision of keeping Arctic as a low-tension region.
So that doesn't seem to quite add up with that. But anyway, Trump's press secretary, Karen Leavitt, said on yesterday that the two sides agreed to establish a working group, which we just mentioned. He'll continue to have technical, not that one, William, sorry, have technical talks on the acquisition of Greenland. The president has made his priority quite clear. The US wants to acquire Greenland. He thinks it's in our best interests for national security. Since the meeting, the headlines, of course, have been full of this BBC article here of troop deployments to Greenland. So we've got the BBC here. We've also got CNBC here. NATO nations deploy to Greenland after tense White House talks. Now this is, they're using terms like deploy. They're hinting at something serious. The situation is not quite as the headlines would want us to believe. What has actually happened is that small numbers of personnel have gone to Greenland to take part in Operation Arctic Endurance, which is a Danish-led NATO military exercise. And now, I'm not going to deny that Arctic Endurance has clearly been quickly organised because it doesn't appear on the NATO Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe exercise page, which we can see here. It's not on that list. The first event is Arctic Dolphin, which take place in February. Now, back in September, we mentioned this article in the BBC suggesting that the competition for control of the Arctic is getting risky. And at the same time, Patrick and I had attended a screening of a propaganda documentary called Arming the Arctic. And so, while the rhetoric continues about Russian and Chinese ships encircling Greenland, that rhetoric's clearly pretty unhinged. Nonetheless, Western nations clearly unhappy with the fact that Russia and China are way ahead in developing the Arctic Silk Road, with the first container ship bringing goods from China to Felixstowe last September. But my question is this, Patrick, I'd just be very interested in your thoughts on that. On this, is Trump's rhetoric about Greenland really about Russia and China? Or is his eye really on the 51st state, Canada? Because we bring the map on screen here. Of course, what we see is that if he does get his mitts on Greenland, Canada's effectively encircled, isn't it? And with all the additional rhetoric about Mexico, Colombia, and Cuba, it actually looks like he wants the whole of North and South America.
Yes, well, at least the whole of North America, save Mexico for now, Mike. But Canada's a British Commonwealth state, isn't it, officially?
Officially, but are we going to go to war with the United States?
Well, it's like we got Europe and Britain have dealing with Putin on the other side, threatening to invade Europe. Then they've got now Trump on the other side. So it's like a pincer movement with the U.S. and Russia coming in. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Totally.
The whole thing. But what's the real motivation? Is it about China and Russia occupying Greenland? Of course not. Don't be silly. Does Russia need any additional land? I kind of don't think so. But anyway, this is what it has to do with. Let's not kid ourselves here. Donald Trump is BSing. Sorry to be explicit. He's BSing the public on this. How a billionaire with interests in Greenland encouraged Donald Trump to acquire the territory. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Ronald Lauder, a friend of Trump. Of course, Trump has many billionaire friends, doesn't he? One day during the first term, Donald Trump summoned a top aide to discuss a new idea. Trump called me down to the Oval Office, says John Bolton, who is his national security advisor. He just said the prominent businessman had just suggested the U.S. buy Greenland. That was in Donald Trump's first term, and understand the significance of this here. Like many of those around the president, Ronald Lauder's policy appear to intersect with his business interests. So the policy intersects with the business, and as Trump has ratcheted up his threats to seize Greenland, Lauder has acquired commercial holdings there. Surprise, surprise. Lauder is also part of a consortium whose desire to access Ukrainian minerals appears to have spurred Trump to demand a share of the war-torn country's resources here. Ladies and gentlemen, do we any further questions on the motivation behind these policies? Remember when Trump said, we're going to get the raw earths? It's rare earths, but Trump said raw earths. Raw earths. And what happened with the raw earths? Nothing's been signed, hasn't been done, but there's plans to try to leverage those away from Ukraine And he's doing it here in Greenland. So all you people that are, pro-Zelensky, waving your Ukrainian flag, like this is some valiant cause for democracy, this is nothing more than a resource grab. Can you work this out yet? I hope so. And by the way, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, they've also got interests in Greenland and the rare earths in Greenland, as well as putting data centers up there and creating an AI hub in Greenland. This is all real. So this has nothing to do with Russia and China. But then again, we're talking about Donald Trump here, so we have to try to tease out his logic, Mike, don't we?
We do. No, I'm going to say, Patrick, I'm no fan of Jon Stewart at all. Because particularly during the COVID years, he was appalling, along with Stephen Colbert and others. But
he's found his footing again.
I suggest he has, because I can't really disagree with anything he says in this clip. So let's just end the program with Jon Stewart here.
I don't understand. Why do we have to take over Greenland?
If we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor.
We're already Russia's already our neighbor. This is where Greenland is. Russia's closer. Unless in your mind you think Alaska lives in a box next to Hawaii. No, I get it. We don't want Russia or China to take over Greenland. Oh, you know what we could do to deter it? Not through arrogance or conquest, but what if we formed like kind of an alliance with Denmark and Greenland? We could include all the North Atlantic nations. What would we call this? Like almost like a North Atlantic treaty organization that I don't know what we could, I guess we'll never know. But again, since we all now dance to the tune of one piper, what possible justifications could you have for just taking someone else's land? And please, if you would, irony-proof your answer.
I'm a fan of Denmark, but the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land.
Can someone pass him a note? How do you think we got our land?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm afraid it's hard to disagree with that, Patrick.
Of course. I mean, just a couple miles down the road there is the Plymouth, the Mayflower Steps.
Yeah,
that's where it all happened. Yeah. They landed a boat in Massachusetts 400 plus years ago. So anyway, absolutely. Trump's not big on history, so let's not get
too hard on him. Yeah.
On the details of all this. It's just history.
Okay, well, look, we got to finish there because we're out of time. We'll be back in a few minutes for some UK Column News Extra. Basil will be joining us for some more discussion on what we've been talking about today. If you're a UK Column member, join us for that. Stay on the live stream. If you're not a member, maybe you would like to join us, and then you can take part in that discussion as well. Thank you to Basil and Patrick and everybody that's been watching. Don't forget Jerm and Carl tonight, and also Jake Fern on Sunday night at 7. But have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday at 1 p.m. as usual. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.